So in this section, we're going to discuss picking and strumming the strings. So it is your decision if you want to use a pick or a plectrum, whatever you want to call it, or if you want to use your fingers to strum or pick the strings. I would recommend learning how to use a pick first, and then decide later if you prefer to use a pick or use your fingers. What happens usually is people will find that they find using a pick really hard, so they just use the fingers, and then they will never learn how to use a pick. So they'll never have the option of different tones, the tonality of picking or strumming with a plectrum, and then changing to using your fingers instead, which do give very different sounds. So what I usually try and get people to do is to learn how to use a pick first, so they know how to use a pick, and then if they decide to just scrap and sack off the pick and not use it ever again, that's fine, but at least they've learned how to use it. But in my experience, if you learn it the other way around and you learn to use your fingers first, then decide to use a pick later, the majority of people I've taught will just not bother using a pick ever. So I think it's just a bit better to have the option and the informed decision about whether you want to use a pick or your fingers, rather than just using your fingers and not a pick just because it's easier. But like I said, it's completely your decision. If you know you never ever want to use a pick and you just don't want to ever use one, then that's fine. Just use your fingers from the start. But if it could be an option that you want to use a pick a little further down the line, it is much better to learn how to use a plectrum first and then use your fingers later. So when it comes to holding a pick, you can experiment a little bit because people do hold them in different ways. Some people I've seen, especially when they first start, will hold it with two fingers and their thumb like this. So this gives them a bit more stability, and it means you might not drop your pick as much. You will drop your pick at first, people do, but that does start to ease up. You don't really drop your pick as much the longer you've been playing. Like, I don't really drop my pick much at all anymore. But at first it's fine to use two fingers and your thumb just to keep it in place. Some people will play with the first finger and their thumb and just hold it like that. Some people will use the second finger, leaving the first finger free. So there is a bit of experimentation, but I'm going to give you a good place to start. So basically, if you take your thumb and you place it so it touches the first knuckle on your first finger. So it goes over the first knuckle on your first finger there, and you get your thumb to go over the top of that knuckle there like that. Then you place the plectrum in between the two, like this. So try and get the right angle here so you can see. So it's like that. And you don't really need to show that much plectrum. You can just show maybe 0.5 centimetre, a few millimetres, and that'll be absolutely fine. Just try and make sure you can actually see what I'm doing here. So once you've got your pick in that position, you can then fiddle around with how your pick is angled. So when I say angled, I mean where it fits into your fingers. Because if it's too far this way, and then you try and strum across the strings, and obviously you want to use the point, then that would mean your wrist would have to do this position, which is very weird, very strange, feels awful, doesn't feel right to me at all. If you had it too far the other way, then what will happen is you'll end up strumming with the elongated flat side of the plectrum, which you don't want at all. You want to be strumming across the strings with the point of the plectrum. Another little tip here for you as well, when you're first starting out playing, you might want to use quite a thin plectrum. You can get different thicknesses of plectrum, but when you first start out, if you use a thin plectrum, it means that it'll be easier to grip because you can hold it a bit tighter so you're not dropping it as much, and it'll still glide across the strings because there's a bit of give in the plectrum. Like this one is a 0.46 millimetre, which is ideal for beginners, and if you see there, you can actually get quite a bit of bend on the plectrum, which means that when you strum the strings, it's going to glide across the strings better, even if you're holding the plectrum really tight. When you get to the point where you've been playing longer, you don't have to grip the plectrum quite as tight. At that point, you might want to try using some thicker plectrums as they have a different tone. For example, I use these really thick plectrums, which are 2 millimeters, and as you see here, I'll get the camera to focus, there is no give in this plectrum at all. It doesn't bend at all. And it has a very different sound to these thin plectrums. But when you're first starting out, thin plectrums are usually a lot better and easier for you to use. Now you're holding the pick and you've got it feeling comfortable. Sometimes people ask me, what do you do with the rest of your hand? Now, you can curl the rest of your hand into a fist, you can fan your fingers out, Really, whatever you want to do with the rest of your hands, as long as you're holding the pick in a comfortable way and it's feeling all right. Okay, so I'll just quickly touch upon using your fingers. I say it's much better to get used to using a pick. I've already covered that. But if you're going to use your fingers, there's loads of different ways you can do it. So you can use your thumb to strum. That's absolutely fine. A lot of people use the thumb just to strum, and it has quite a nice tonality. Use your first finger to strum the strings. That's absolutely fine. A mixture of them both. So down with the thumb and up with the finger, or down with the nail side of the finger, up with the nail side of your thumb. Whatever feels comfortable, that's absolutely fine. And again, it's up to you to experiment to see what feels right to you.